This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. I'm a corporate employee with an entrepreneurial mindset. This podcast will help and support you with new ideas about business. These are my thoughts, ideas, and comments. Today, I have Joe Sullivan, who is a marketing expert in the industrial industry. So we're going to go straight to it. How are you doing, Joe?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Given the circumstances out there, I feel okay, generally speaking. So
good. How has COVID-19 affected your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's affected us as it has everybody in some capacity. In general, I feel fortunate. We haven't had to lay off anybody. We're a 17-person agency, and we've been able to remain stable, and a lot of our clients are doing okay, or good enough to stay on their feet. So they've been sticking with us. We've been doing what we can to kind of shift our priorities to support them, but doing okay so far.
Good. All right, so we're going to go back to your origin story. So you did an advertising design and marketing degree at Washington University in St. Louis.
Got it.
So, how was that?
It was a great program. It was, a long time ago already, it feels like, but it was, I graduated about 15 years ago, I guess, this month. So, I did a dual degree in art and business. I was kind of always an art kid growing up, and wanted to apply that. So my degree in the art school was visual communications, and kind of knowing that I wanted to go into the graphic design world, and then on the marketing side, or in the business school, I got a degree in marketing, and sort of put those things together and put them to use pretty quickly.
So you did a couple of years as an art director at advertising company. Mm-hmm. What was that like, being an art director?
Yeah, so I used my the skill set that I'd kind of honed and developed in school and prior as really a graphic designer, but applied that in the advertising world. So the company I worked for was called Shoop Company. They closed their doors a few years back, but they were about a 30-person firm or so, also here in St. Louis. And I was paired with a copywriter, and the two of us did a lot of promotional marketing for. It was a pharmacy chain we worked on. We worked on Miller Beer, but it was bigger consumer brands, and it was a great company. Had learned a lot there, but I felt like I wanted to kind of take my own route, and always had sort of a dream of owning my own business. And so was fortunate to have already known my now business partner, John Franco, who had sort of complementary skill sets to me, and we got our things started pretty quickly.
So how did you work out your sort of complementary skill sets? Because a lot of people that I've interviewed have often talked about them and their business partner have different roles completely. Some might be business, some might be art, or the creative side. And so how have you worked out your different relationships in the business?
Yeah, well, he came from had a journalism background. University of Missouri's journalism school is a great school, right? A couple hours down the road from us. And my background being more in art, we sort of had the right pair to be creatives in the advertising world. So a lot of our work, 15 years back, was a lot of print advertising, and it's getting into digital at that point in time a little bit, but we had sort of those two key creative skill sets between writing and design, and put those together. So it was sort of a natural fit there. And then as we started putting together a business plan and launched our business, there were a lot of things we had to learn and just sort of figure out along the way. And we've kind of continued to really balance each other in terms of, he's exceptional with people, and he's sort of honed his skill set around HR and recruiting, retention, employee development. And I've kept my focus on more consulting and marketing and sales for our company. So in some ways we've been lucky, where I think our skill sets sort of, naturally complemented each other, but we've also made very intentional decisions to hone our respective areas within the business.
Okay, we're going to talk a lot about marketing and strategy in this interview, but one of my research, you predominantly work for manufacturing industry, is that right? So what attracted you to that industry?
Yeah, originally it just sort of happened. We've been in business for for about 14 years or so, and we've in the earliest days, we kind of would take a check from whoever was willing to write one, and we had all kinds of different clients, from industrial to the hair salon down the road, and the local dentist and restaurants and everything. And so we were kind of just all over the place trying to find our place and figure out what we were good at. And within a couple of years, we realized were the things we were really good at doing were more in the B2B world. So, and in particular, working with companies who made things, companies who, people who get their hands dirty, making stuff, construction, manufacturing. And so through referrals and through seeking out some business on our own, those were some of our earlier clients, were in construction and manufacturing. And it didn't take too long, a few years before we sort of looked at it and said, this is what we want to do. These are the types of companies we want to work for, and in particular companies who sold big ticket items, complex solutions, long sales cycles, and sold to buying committees with multiple people involved. And we became really good at doing that. We enjoyed it. We liked the type of people we were working with there. And so we just made an intentional decision to own that and brand ourselves as the industrial marketing agency.
So, so how has the manufacturing industry changed in 13, 15 years or so? Because in the UK, our manufacturing has reduced considerably. There has been a bit of a bounce back with the car industry in the UK. But I know that, I don't want to get political, but Trump has come back and said he wants to make manufacturing part of the US industry again. How has manufacturing changed?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of the changes that I see and hear about the most are things related to Industry 4.0 and bringing technology into a very traditional space in a lot of ways. So looking at automation of facilities and connectivity, Internet of Things, and so a lot of the sort of this digital transformation that you hear about is almost a buzzword out there, is very applicable to a lot of our clients. And so not only in their operations, but also in the way they're starting to think about how they go to market and apply marketing and sales strategy in a more digital and innovative way. So.
Yeah, interesting. So let's go on to marketing. So what's the most important thing that my listeners should be if they are thinking about marketing in 2020?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is creating focus. It's such a simple thing, but there are just so many organizations out there who, they might have 10 different product lines or 100 or more, or 15 different industry verticals that they have done business with and in theory could do business with. And rather than sort of taking the time to sit there and say, who are our most profitable customers? Who are the ones that we're best at serving? Who are the ones that aren't a drain on our resources, but we're actually selling what we want to be selling to them and in a high enough volume to make a dent. You just have companies spreading themselves thin, trying to kind of be everything to everybody, and their message is reflected that way on the marketing front. Their sales approach is sort of scattered and all over the place. So one of the first things that we always emphasize is you got to create some focus. Start with who your ideal customer is at a company level, and then look at who the influencers are in the buying process inside of those companies that you need to reach. People who are experiencing a pain or have questions or trying to get answered to help them in their jobs, and zero in on those people and the things they care about, and build your marketing strategy around them specifically.
Interesting. So what's your strategy for your clients about generating sales leads?
hmm So I think it's you need a pronged approach here. So there's lots of buzz out there, has been for 5+ years, about inbound marketing. Publish lots of content, just publish, and the traffic will come and the leads will come. And there's some truth to it, but I think it's sort of a trap that a lot of companies fall into, where they think that we can um, use SEO as our standalone way to generate leads. And the reality is, unless you're a big established company and you have authority in online the way that you made in the real world, unless you have that working for you already, inbound marketing and SEO can be kind of an uphill battle for a lot of companies, especially when you're in a crowded space. So there needs to be a component to that, but you need to create some balance there and look at, how I think what we always try to start doing is we help our clients create that focus, create a base of content that addresses those issues and pain points that their customers and prospects have. And then you use that content that's helpful in nature and resourceful, not about you, but about them and how to help them. And you use it in your inbound marketing approach, but you also use it in your outbound prospecting approach. If you're building lists of people from the right companies, and your sales team is out there prospecting, whether that means cold calls or emails or knocking on doors, can you arm them with resources that actually help the buyer, as opposed to just talking about who you are and what you do and why somebody should buy what you have to sell? Because nobody cares about that, right?
Mm.
So I think the lead generation approach that often makes the most sense is one that's balanced, where you're focusing for the long term on building authority for your website through content and SEO, but at the same time, you're using that same content to arm your sales team for your outbound approach, and you're probably amplifying the visibility of that content through some paid media, whether that means Google Ads, whether it means advertising to a very targeted audience on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. You got to dial in on that right person and figure out how to get in front of them.
So one of the questions I was going to ask later, but let's ask it now. So for
Yeah.
you, what's more important for a company? Let's take industrial, not that out of the scene, but just to think, for a company, is SEO on Google Ads or SEO on Google more important now than, say, something like Facebook ads are?
Sure. It's definitely an it depends question, as you're my answer to that, as many are. But I think the best way to think about it is that SEO is often a longer term strategy. It's not, you're not going to invest in SEO for a month and start to see a ton of results materialize in most cases, right? Unless again, you're a company whose website already has a ton of authority and you can target some keywords, and because your site's authoritative, the pages you publish will also be authoritative. But SEO tends to be a longer term play, and it requires some patience. It requires persistent publishing of content and resources that are going to fulfill the search queries and the intent of searchers out there that are looking for what you have to offer. So I think that's the way to look at that. You're not going to win that game overnight. When you look at, say, Facebook or LinkedIn and marketing through those platforms, you can do it organically through those platforms. You can do it in a paid way through those platforms. And I think the paid social channels are a really great way to drive some results more quickly, because not that different from, say, running an ad on a billboard. You drive down the highway and you see the billboard and somebody's paid for that space for a month or 3 months or however long. When you stop paying, that visibility goes away. Well, the same thing sort of applies when you're, say, using paid social or pay-per-click ads. You're essentially renting access to your audience from a big media company, right? As opposed to building something that's sustainable. So I think they're two different games, but they play really nicely together, where the paid, social can be a great short-term play. Inbound can be a great long-term play.
So you said about content.
Mm-hmm.
So can you provide too much content in this world where you could put advertising on Google, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on all these different platforms? Is there actually an argument that you can actually have too much content which sort of muddies or clogs up your what the message you're trying to share?
Sure. I think I think there can be too much content. I think if you're publishing for the sake of publishing, then it's probably too much content. If there's really just nothing to say. But, I think if you're truly an expert in what you do, and maybe your company collectively, the people at your company are experts in what you do, and each has their, different areas of expertise. There's probably a lot to say, and it's a matter of figuring out how to sort of harness the insights and knowledge and experience in their brains and tap into that. It's something we've started doing this year at our company. We're, again, a small 17, 18 person company, but and a lot of the content we've published over the last few years has been me writing, filming video content. What we've done this year is we've said, well, let's, intentionally focus on, I have 4 strategists in house. Each of them have deep areas of expertise in things like SEO that, my expertise doesn't go that deep. I'm a more high level marketer and consultant on the marketing front. So let's tap into their brains and pull some of the really deep expertise there. I have copywriters who come from journalism backgrounds. Let's tap into their expertise around how to write great content and interview people and do research. So if you think about it for your business, for the listeners here, what are these different areas of expertise that different individuals have that can be helpful to your audience, and then focus on harnessing that. And I think when you think about it that way, you'll find there's a lot to say. One of the sort of famous marketers out there is Gary Vaynerchuk, who's everybody kind of knows, and he's got methodology for, this guy spits out multiple pieces of content daily, and he's one guy, and it's pretty incredible because his following's huge, his content's all valuable. So if you want to look at a guy who has figured out how to do it right, I'd take a look at his model.
Yeah, it's interesting because so I release, it's a kind of a personal question because my podcast. I'm only kidding. But so one of the things that I'm approaching is being able to release on multiple different platforms. So I release all my podcasts on all platforms. I'm doing some short 1 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute sort of excerpts of things that I've learned, things that I've understood, things that I've experienced, and sort of bringing that onto different platforms to see where the content best lies, because most of my content is business related. So so LinkedIn has a high volume on that, but equally sometimes Facebook, as it's got 2 billion people on it, you sometimes get a larger reach. So as a business consultant, is there any particular platform which you would say is the one that's going to make bigger inroads in on listenership, on followers, on that sort of sense?
I think the best way to answer that question is you need to be where your audience is. I'm not trying to, answer with a cop-out answer there, but I think it's the truth. If your audience is super active on Instagram and not LinkedIn, well, even if, say, LinkedIn might have a bigger reach, you're going to have probably better results on Instagram. So kind of a random example there, but so I think you got to start there. Who is the audience and that's again why focus is so important. Who's the audience you're trying to reach? Where do they gather information? I would much rather reach 10 of the perfect types of customers than 100 of just people who could be anybody, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to go that much further. So, but I think when you look at the social platforms in general, chances are your audience is, if you're in the B2B world, is on LinkedIn.
Mm.
you know, regardless of your audience, they're probably on Facebook. But again, that depends on the demographic. You're serving a young audience in their 20s, maybe not Facebook. So
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's only a reason why I asked the personal question is because um, I'm approaching a strategy of releasing, because I've thought about my ideal client. I just released something today on thinking about what your ideal client is and being able to service those people. And I think it's really important to think of the demographic of who you're trying to reach out to, and so LinkedIn is obviously incredibly powerful. It gets a larger reach for me personally than say Instagram, but Facebook obviously is just on, because the people that I know and the people that are involved on Facebook, I find it quite a good reach as well. So I totally get your point. There is no unless you have an expert in your team, which I don't have, that's able to drill down and understand the analytics side of where your people are and what your platforms are. I think I get your point. The scattergun approach is sometimes against what you should be focusing on, because I like what you said. It's worth having 10 people who are engaged or raving fans, as some people call them, than having 100 people viewing them and no one doing anything about it. So I totally get your point. I think that is a valuable marketing. I think you also mentioned about Gary Vee, and Gary Vee's got this balance of producing huge numbers of content, and all he talks about is you must be releasing to all these different platforms. I think he has just been able to intersect between the 18-year-olds that are interested on Instagram, as well as the 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds who are on Facebook, and he's even managed with his authority on business to be able to work out a LinkedIn approach as well. So I think for him, he's been able to intersect all the different demographics, which I think is really interesting.
yeah. Yeah, and I love, there are things that he does that make a lot of sense. And everybody's got their different ways of doing this, but the idea of creating a piece of content that can then be broken down into little bits.
Yeah.
Excuse me. You said you've been kind of starting to do that yourself too, and we have as well. And we're sort of experimenting with a new way of producing content for our clients right now, where we do what we're calling a knowledge extraction day, where we ahead of time, we have a positioning and content strategy workshop with our clients, where we start by zeroing in on, starting with focus. Who are the people, who are the types of companies we're trying to reach? Who are the influencers inside those companies, the people who will impact the buying process? For our clients, it's often engineers, plant managers, procurements, CFOs, CEOs. What are the things that each of those different people care about? Because they all have different responsibilities and things that matter to them in the buying process. So we kind of map all that out ahead of time in a workshop. And then we book for a few weeks down the road what we're calling Knowledge Extraction Day, where we bring a videographer on site, or at least during non-COVID times, that's what we would be doing. Put a videographer on site, line up interviews, this person at 8:30, this person at 9 o'clock, this person at 10 o'clock, and all these different experts inside of your company. You line them up, you turn the camera on, and you interview them. And that's where our journalists come in handy. But you could do this internally at your company too. Get them talking about these things. How do you address these issues and pains and goals of your customers? And with the camera on, now all of a sudden you've got an option after this is over to use that as pure video content. You could take a half-hour interview and break it down into small clips to publish on YouTube and stream into your website. Shorter clips that might be good to publish to LinkedIn through the profiles of different people on your company. You could have that content transcribed and use that as written content, or have a writer edit down the transcripts into something that's more polished and publish that as content. So so many different options for what to do when or how to publish and where to publish. when you can create that focus and get the right people talking in their area of expertise.
Yeah, sounds awesome. That sounds a really, really smart move.
Sure.
So how does marketing and sales align to manufacturers?
Getting marketing and sales in alignment, is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
making them both work in conjunction with each other.
Yeah. Well, it's something, it's an interesting topic, this idea of marketing and sales alignment, because, a lot of the people that I follow on LinkedIn, marketing types they work more in the SaaS world, software world, where a lot of them are more innovative marketers. The clients of these people like me are more in the SaaS world, are more advanced from a marketing perspective. They tend to naturally collaborate better with salespeople. In the manufacturing sector, things tend to be a little behind. Like, we have these companies that are, second or third generation family businesses. They might be 50 or $100 million companies, but they're operating like it's 1995 from the standpoint of marketing. They might be more sophisticated on the sales front, but they're more sales focused organizations. And so the marketing to them means trade shows. It means fancy brochures. It means running print ads that in the same publications that they've been running them in for the last 15 years. And so marketing and sales sort of have, I guess, moved apart, or have always sort of been apart in their own silos here, where sales is doing their thing, marketing is doing theirs, and they're not much in alignment, nor do they care what each other's doing. And it's just such a backwards approach, because if you think about it, both parts of the organization are there to drive business. Marketing is there to create opportunities. Sales is there to take those opportunities and bring them to fruition. So there needs to be a really close alignment there. And it's something that we work very hard on early on with our clients. We make sure that in the earliest days of working with a new client, we've got the VP of sales and the head of marketing in the same room, focused on the same goals. We have the CEO or president there as well, to sort of mandate from top down that this is what needs to happen, and these two organizations need to be working together. Because then you start creating a system where, marketing understands what sales is trying to accomplish, who you're in agreement about, who that ideal customer profile is, who those buying process influencers are, what message needs to be delivered to each of them. And now marketing can go generate demand and start driving traffic from, online, but also opening up conversations in other ways for the sales team, and everybody's working together.
And have you found digital marketing as a whole? You said that sometimes manufacturing industries are slightly less developed on those sorts of things. How have you found selling, for example, Facebook ads for your manufacturers? Are they pushing back on that, or are they looking to embrace? Because digital marketing is everywhere. Everyone has a laptop. So many of these people in COVID-19 are working from home. I know manufacturers have to be, I've got a couple of friends who are in manufacturing, and they're still deemed key workers because they produce food and stuff. So do you find trying to sell Facebook ads for manufacturers sometimes are misaligned, or do you find that you could find a fit in the Facebook world as well?
Sure. It's a good question. A lot of times when we'll propose the idea of a Facebook ad to a B2B manufacturer, the gut reaction is, well, Facebook's more of a B2C platform. And what we say is, well, do the people that you do business with, are they on Facebook? And well, yeah, they're probably on Facebook, but they're probably there more for, sharing pictures of their family and things like that. But, it doesn't really matter. It can be a super effective channel. And I don't know exactly what the numbers look like, but if you compare LinkedIn to Facebook advertising, I want to say that on average, a Facebook ad is like 20% or even less the cost of a LinkedIn ad. So,
Wow.
when you're looking at that, there's a huge cost efficiency. Facebook has a massive network. And a lot of, I look at my manufacturing audience and, well, who's Facebook's demographic? I mean, there's a lot of 50, 60 some year old males on Facebook. And when that's largely my audience, and the audience of my customers as well in the manufacturing world, when you're looking at C-suites and VPs of sales and everything. And so I think that's the question to ask. If your audience is there, well, can we deliver a very targeted message to them? Facebook can actually be a really great platform. We've had some success recently with a couple clients doing exactly that.
So, so I have got involved in property in the last 6 months or so, and I found that actually Facebook groups are very, very good. You don't need to advertise. You can reach out to people in similar industries, in similar areas, and you can go there and ask questions. Obviously, you can't sell in the Facebook groups, although you can be an authority if you are an authority, and that can generate leads in that sort of way. But do Facebook groups impact manufacturers as well?
You know, I can't really answer that.
I don't see it very often.
I haven't seen a lot of it either. I'm not going to say no because I don't know definitively that that's the case, but I haven't seen it quite as much. I see it in my world a little bit as you know, a lot of people in the marketing space use Facebook groups as a way to build communities of, you know, their followers and get them more engaged and get people in their own customers talking to each other and sharing ideas and insights. A lot of times it's a value add for you know, professional services to have their clients and prospects in sort of a group where they can collaborate and share ideas. I haven't seen it so much in the manufacturing space, and we've made more use of LinkedIn than we have Facebook with our clientele. And I've found with LinkedIn groups, they're kind of ghost towns. It's a bunch of marketing people in manufacturing talking to each other. You know, I can't say it's a huge area of expertise, the groups, whether that's LinkedIn or Facebook for me. So I don't want to speak to it too much here, but you know, I know that Facebook communities are really huge for a lot of companies, probably just more outside of my manufacturing world.
Yeah, I would agree so far.
Yeah.
But that could change. Like the rate of change of Facebook groups has increased I've seen in the last 2 years probably. Sure. It's just exploded in my sort of area of podcasting and property and sort of entrepreneurship is just building momentum as it goes. Yeah. So my last question is about LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, you've said a couple of times that you sort of see that as the majority of your sort of direction. How does LinkedIn differ? I know LinkedIn differs on the it's mainly business people that you're reaching, but how does LinkedIn sort of differ from Facebook in the fact that there's a lot of entrepreneurs on Facebook as well as LinkedIn, but LinkedIn still over the last 2 or 3 years has become an authority for everything to do with business and companies and people like that?
Yeah. Well, I think that's what you said there is probably the main point, is that, you know, LinkedIn is intentionally designed for businesses, right? For networking and sharing insights in the business world. So, you know, every once in a while I'll see somebody post something, you know, with a political, you know, sort of note to it, and then you'll see people jumping on it. Hey, this is for Facebook. This isn't for LinkedIn. Get this stuff off LinkedIn. And so I think, you know, that's kind of one of the differences there is, whereas in Facebook, you have this sort of combination of your personal life and maybe some business. It probably skews more towards the former. So LinkedIn, I think, is, generally speaking, is maybe a better publishing platform for content that is designed for businesses. You know, we'll take blog posts that I write on our site that might be 1,000 words, and I'll break them down into, you know, a few small posts that fit LinkedIn's 1,300 character limit, and publish those as sort of standalone mini posts on LinkedIn. And they are, you know, generally pretty well received and get engagement. but I'm not going to use those on Facebook in the same way, because a majority of my network there is probably not going there to learn, right, or to necessarily gather insights. Now, I think, and this is just my opinion on it, but I think that Facebook can be, like we said earlier, a great advertising platform to be able to put a visual ad in front of somebody in a very targeted way, where you say, I want people from these companies or with these job titles and these interests in this geographic region, because it can be so tightly targeted. I just don't know that organically I would share the same insights on Facebook as I would on LinkedIn.
That's fair enough. And so I read somewhere recently that LinkedIn has just passed Twitter's followers. Do you see LinkedIn post COVID-19 still being increasing its numbers?
I don't see why not. I think any digital platform that allows people to, interface with other professionals that are like them or potential customers is just going to be growing here. I think there's so much uncertainty about what things are going to look like after COVID, if there is an after COVID. I mean, who knows what really is going to happen here. So I think you see what's happening with Zoom meetings and just video conferencing. I mean, generally speaking, people who didn't have a reason to make themselves more technology savvy are just doing that already. And so it's going to lend itself to probably a lot of different digital platforms being more widely used, I imagine.
Yeah, I would agree. Right, thank you, Joe. This is that's the last of our sort of main questions. I've got now 5 quick fire questions. As I said, they don't need a quick fire answer, but they're just sort of quick fire questions. So what's the best decision that you made?
Best decision I made. I think it was making the decision to take the leap when I did. It felt kind of like a stupid 24-year-old when me and my business partner quit our jobs and started our business, but I was living in a small apartment with 2 roommates and paying a few $100 US a month rent, and didn't have a wife or kids yet. And so I look back on it thinking it was maybe a little impulsive, but somehow it was the right decision and the right time. So that's my answer to that one.
Good. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I've used this one a lot over the years, but one of our advisors, her name is Mitch Myers. She was an agency owner in St. Louis area who grew her agency to 250 people or so, and then sold it. And she's sort of a family member of my business partner, John. But it was a simple thing she told us very early on. She said, "You are the work that you do." And, we kind of remember sitting there thinking about it a little bit. And what she was communicating to us is that, if we started doing work, if we started doing all web design work, or we started doing all work for local restaurants, well, people are going to see what you do, and that's what they're going to assume you do. And I think it was a really important nugget for us around creating focus for ourselves that eventually, was at the forefront of our minds. And we committed to being an industrial marketing agency, and knowing we were eliminating a lot of potential customers out there, but the ones that we were focused on were going to be right for us, and they were going to see our area of expertise and focus and say, that's the right agency for us. So,
yeah. So my mentor says, a Bruce Lee quote. He says he doesn't worry about the person that does 1,000 different kicks once. He worries about the person that does one kick 1,000 times.
Yeah,
and I think that's incredibly important. A lot of people get scattergunned, all these different approaches, but if you hone in on one thing and do it exceptionally well, you can do anything. So I would agree. I'd agree with that. Who helped you most in your career?
That's a really good question. Yeah, sounds kind of crazy to say, but I think my business partner John has helped me the most, and would guess he may say the same. I think having this balance here, we've known a lot of agency owners over the years, and a lot of them were solopreneurs who then built their agencies around them, but they were all alone at the top. And I think having the balanced skill sets that the two of us have, and the support for, whether it's something happening in our personal life or something in business, you got another person there to pick you up and kind of keep you propped up and keep everything going and be a support system. So I feel super fortunate that I've always had John there to, help me, influence me, and vice versa.
Awesome. Any regrets?
Regrets. Let's see here. I mean, it's tough to come up with anything real specific. I think if there was anything, it would be, I wish we would have figured out how to focus a little earlier. And I said it at the beginning of this podcast that I think the most important thing from a marketing perspective, which I think just applies to how you shape your business, is to make some conscious decisions about what you are good at doing, who you're best at serving, and then just owning it. So, if we could have done it a little earlier, I think we would have, moved a little faster, but yeah.
Okay, awesome. What are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of having built an agency where we employ, this is my business partner and I, and then we employ 15 other people. And we have an agency that is people legitimately love working at. We've built a great culture here, and we hear it in reviews, both publicly and privately. And it's cool to do that, because I know there are a lot of companies in our space that they're kind of sweatshops. People work till 8, 9 o'clock at night very regularly, and are stressed out all the time. And we figured out how to make it work on a pretty much a 9 to 5 with, everybody puts in their extra hours when they need to, but and people enjoy being around each other. So I think it's the having built a culture where, we enjoy being here and around each other, that I'm probably most proud of.
Awesome. Right, so that's the end of the questions. Thank you very much for your time, Joe. It's been really, really fascinating to delve into marketing, and I've taken some really good notes as well. I always find when I do a podcast, if I've taken a lot of notes as well, that is a good podcast. So that's awesome.
Good
Where's the best place people can find you?
Yeah, so I would go to our website's Learning Center, gorilla76.com/learn, gorilla like the animal, then 76.com. We publish insights there at least once a week. Every Monday morning, something goes live there, if not more often. And it's all purely educational content for B2B manufacturers specifically, but probably 90% of what we publish is relevant to any B2B company out there. So that's where I direct you.
Awesome. Right. Thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciate your time. It's been really fascinating. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.